Hello, everybody, and welcome along to our Unplugged live series where I share real stories from remarkable people about life changes and things that they implement into their everyday life in order to find a little bit more headspace, in order to unplug from the demands of life, but also the voices in our head. So today I'm so excited to be joined by Shelley McKenzie, who is a clinical nutritionist and naturopath, founder of Freedom Wellness, and a proud mama of two boys. Now, Shelley has undergone her own incredible personal well-being journey, which started off at the age of 24 when she encountered some really challenging circumstances, all to do with her own physical well-being. And from there, that really sparked and ignited, I guess, her own journey initially, but then also how to empowered her and really lit that fire in her own belly to go on and share those learnings and experiences in order to help people within their own well-being journeys. So I am so excited to have Shelley join us. I see she's just joined now, so I'm going to ask today.
Hi.
There we go. Hello. Such a surprise when it works. Oh, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's so lovely to see your face.
I know you too. It's been a little while.
It has been a little while, and yeah, it's been a few months and a whole other lifetime, I guess, since we've last spoken, which has had a lot going on in between. So
Yes.
yeah.
It's a whole different
How
world
did
these
you?
days.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So welcome and thank you for joining us for this chat today. I'm so delighted. I'm such a big fan of you and all that you do. And I'm really excited to share a little bit more about you and your story. I think a lot of people can really resonate, but also learn a lot from all you have to say and share. So I have done a little bit of an introduction to you, but before we get started, I really wanted to begin with a check-in, as I always start off these conversations with, and just, if you were to say on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is that you're totally stressed, overwhelmed, off the charts, and 10 is where you're feeling amazing on top of the world, where do you reckon you're sitting today?
Oh, today is Fridays are a very relaxed day for me, to be honest. I've got a toddler at daycare and a hubby home from work. So I'm pretty good today. I'm probably at about an 8 in terms of relaxed. I've been for a big, beautiful walk this morning and I've bumped into lots of people. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty full and cup full and relaxed today.
Nice. That sounds like a good start to the day.
It was a great start, very spontaneous, but nice.
They're always the best ones, I reckon.
Yeah.
And then if you were to say, like, over the scale of the past 18 months, where do you reckon you've been sitting?
Oh, that varies a lot depending on what I've got going on. So, not sure if you mentioned, but to those listening, I've got two babies, so a toddler and a baby. And work and study and all the rest of it. And so over the last 18 months and being in lockdown, yeah, it's definitely gone up and down. I would say on average, I've definitely been middle. But there's definitely been more days where I've sent out an SOS to my husband or my mum to come and help, or, like everyone, it's had its challenge, particularly here in Melbourne, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what I've been talking to a lot of people about in these chats even too is how varied it's been as well. That notion of a roller coaster and that like even of a morning it might start off, an 8 or a 9 and then suddenly by, mid morning you're like right down at a 2 and you're like, what just happened? I think
Yeah.
it's been the highs and the lows have been pretty extreme, but also really frequent too, which has been really interesting to navigate.
For
Yeah.
sure, sure. Yeah. And you're so right. Like it, yeah, it changes so quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully here in Melbourne there is a little bit of freedom on our way. Fingers crossed. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. You know, obviously we've had a little bit of a chat, and I've listened to lots of you sharing your story in the past. But would love you to share a little bit more, I guess, about you and your journey to where you're at right now. You know, it's been, you know, a journey that I've known has spanned up since, you know, 24 and even before then, and, you
Mm.
know, where you've gone through quite significant life changes, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, I would love to hear a bit more about how it is that you got here and some of the pivotal moments that got you to this point.
Yeah. So, yeah, as you mentioned, I guess, growing up, I was raised in a pretty healthy family. Like mum and dad did what they knew best. And, we were a meat and five veg type family and lots of exercise and always outside and everything. And then when I was 18, I moved to Melbourne and I guess started living a life of a lot of partying and drinking alcohol, never any drugs, but just lots and lots of binge drinking and late nights. And that basically was from, Thursday till Monday. That's how I was living. And I came here as a personal trainer. So I was exercising and training people, and I was a good personal trainer, but I definitely wasn't living a healthy life, and exercise was probably the only thing that really was keeping me, uh, like grounded, I guess, to some extent, and to keep my health in balance to some extent. Um, so lots and lots of partying, and my body had been sort of telling me that things weren't right for a long time, and I just kept choosing to ignore that and kept partying. So I was getting lots of like digestive symptoms and lots of fatigue, like very extreme fatigue and things like that. Ignore, ignore, ignore. And then rewind to 24, and I got really sick one night when one weekend I was heading back to my parents' house in the country, and I had to pull over on the side of the road because I just couldn't even drive anymore. And I got home and I went and got a massage thinking that that would help. And the next day I physically could not get my body out of bed. Like I had to ring my parents on the home line from my mobile and be like, I need help getting out of bed. And dad came and picked me up and took me to the couch. And I spent the next 4 weeks there. And my health just continued to decline. No one knew what was going on. I saw lots of specialists and I had home visit doctors, lots of tests done. I lost 15 kilos and, just did not have that weight to lose. I couldn't hold any food down. I was so weak I could barely walk. Like I had to have full at-home care. And I just started dating my now husband, Macca, and between him, he came to the country, and between him and my parents, someone was at home looking after me for that 4 weeks. And eventually I was diagnosed with a condition that I say is now really common, because I feel like at the time, maybe I just hadn't heard of it or knew anyone with it, but Hashimoto's a thyroid disease, very, very common now. And I guess a lot of people, when they're diagnosed, have a different diagnosis to what I experienced, but that's probably because I was ignoring it for so long. And so eventually my body just shut down. It's like, if you're going to keep doing this, I'm shutting down. So that really led me on a path of good nutrition, learning how to, start to heal my body. I was given a bag of medication from the doctors to start taking, and I was to take one pill every day for the rest of my life. And although I'm not against medication, I just knew that for me, I wanted to try diet and lifestyle first, because I knew I hadn't been looking after myself in any way except for maybe exercise. So Macca and I were actually heading over to India, and we were riding a motorbike down the coastline of India for 6 weeks. And so it was over there I actually started playing around with my diet. I went plant-based, used lots of herbs and spices, and started eating lots of really beautiful, warming, like curries and all that they had to offer. And it was from there I started to realize that, okay, well, I'm already feeling better and I haven't had to take my medication yet, even though I took it with me. And so when I got home, that was when I started playing around, and I felt changes really instantly. And I guess I wanted to share that knowledge, but not just from a personal point of view. So I went on to study nutritional medicine, which then led me to naturopathy. And that's sort of where I am now. Like, I mean, a lot has happened in between. You know, I gave up alcohol for 2 years, which meant I gave up a lot of friendships I'd built in Melbourne as well. So I had to go through that, had to find my tribe again, and you know, all those sorts of things that I think at some point or another we all have felt lonely, and we've all felt like we need to, you know, find our purpose and ourselves again. And so it was very much that journey, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. What a story. I mean, and something that I'm sure so many can resonate with. You know, I even know myself in my own experience, that notion of just not listening to the warning signs, you know, that are constantly, I always talk about like that tap on the shoulder versus like the slap on the head mentality, that it's like, listen, listen, listen. And it's sometimes too many times and too often, unfortunately, it takes for that slap across the head for you to actually stop back and say, oh, you know, I really need to pay attention to something here. Something's not happening.
Yeah.
You know, and I really am inspired by how you've utilized that experience, you know, to empower you to help other people on their own journey. So, I mean, is that something that you come across a lot in your own work, in terms of like people just ignoring those warning signs? Or, you know, why do you think it takes for us to get to that point versus actually listening to the little taps on the shoulder instead?
I think we're so used to feeling a certain way, and when you're used to feeling a certain way, sometimes it's hard to know what is ahead and what you can feel like. So I think we put up with it. So for instance, like I'll see lots of clients and they're like, I'll ask them a question about, say, their digestion or, you know, what have you. And they say, oh yeah, but that's been there for years. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not normal. You know, all women, we're very prone to just putting up with whatever our menstrual cycle throws at us, like the cramping and the bloating and the PMS, thinking it's normal. So I think a part of it is ingrained in us, like our mothers experienced that and our grandmothers. And so we now just thought that's just what's in the family line, you know. So I think a part of it is definitely our upbringing and that lack of conversation around how one should be feeling. And I think another part of it is that when you've been feeling a certain way for so long, you don't know how well or how good you can feel. So we put up with it. And sometimes it just takes, you know, for the first hour, and you know this, of my consults, like when I'm first meeting someone, I spend an hour just talking about their body and asking them questions, and half the questions they've never thought of because they've never been asked. And then they might go away and start thinking about that question and be like, oh my God, that does happen to me. And I'm like, it doesn't need to. So, you know, I think it's a combination of the two for sure. For me, I was just having far too much fun, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's just something that it's like, it's nearly the hard path to go down, to actually face into a lot of that stuff. So often the easier option can feel to just ignore it, you know, or just put it away in the bag and just carry it along, you know, it's okay. It's like, I'll deal with it later. It's kind of really that too hard basket sometimes, until often it's too late, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you touched a little bit there on your own journey, you know, a lot of it was around the physical symptoms, you know, of what you were going through. And often, you know, when we talk about well-being, it's a very much a two-sided or two-pronged approach. It's very much the mental health and also the physical health. Like, did you see that as you started to implement and make those changes, that you were also seeing changes mentally, you know, or was it purely just a physical thing?
No. So mentally, so so when I was diagnosed and then come back from India and I made the decision that I was going to make some really big changes, it really did mean disconnecting with almost everyone I knew in Melbourne, because I built almost all my relationships on alcohol and partying. And for me, I didn't know how to have friendships with those people without the alcohol. And so I feel like I remember Macca and I had moved out of Melbourne to Seaford, and I remember one night he got home and I'd cut off from like all my friends, and essentially I broke up with them. Like, it wasn't just a fade away, like I broke up with a lot of my friends. And I remember one night Macca got home and he's walked in, he's like, what is wrong? And he said from the driveway he could hear me howling, like I was crying. I was laying in a bath, just laying in this bath soaking, just crying. And like I really went through this mourning period, and I used to ring my mom because I was like so lonely, and it would have been so easy for me to fall back into just old patterns and to take the medication and not to work on myself, because I really was lonely. Like, we'd moved out of Melbourne. I knew no one. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So mentally, I had to do a lot of work to come back up from that, I guess. And it's, you know, I'm so glad I did the work. And it's funny because recently I've had people from my past life come back into my world. And there's one friend particularly who's come back in my world after 10 years. She just randomly stumbled across me on Instagram, and we reconnected, and we see each other every week because she's in my little bubble. And every time I leave her, it's just the nicest friendship I could have ever asked. And had we had that time apart, I don't know where that relationship would have gone, but we've both done so much growth and so much work that we're just ready for our friendship to really blossom in this new direction. And so I can't regret anything from that period, but I definitely hit a low and had to do a lot of work, like mentally, and I had to try to find my group of people again. So I actually enrolled and started bodybuilding, which was so far-fetched, but I was like, I just need a, you know, really strong goal. I need to, oh, that friend's just messaging me. She must be watching. But I was like, so I did bodybuilding. I just needed a strong goal. And that also helped me meet other people who were also looking for something. They wanted health in their life. They wanted change in their life. So bodybuilding sent me mentally not in a great headspace because I became very restrictive around food and I had to climb back out of that. But I also met some really amazing people and went on that journey with them, and they're still in my life. So yeah, it was a lot of that. Like, it was a lot of I guess around friendships and relationships and and doing the work there for sure.
I mean, I think it really demonstrates just how important that social connection piece can play in terms of your mental health as well.
Yeah.
How when that gets stripped away, you can kind of feel like, you know, it can be very confronting around how much you kind of hang, you know, who you are and what you do and your self-worth as well around the people and the relationships that you have in your life. But it's interesting, I guess, looking at your journey, you've had very many chapters, you know, from in terms of the PT, you know, through to the journey that you've made so many different changes to the nutritionist, the naturopath, the bodybuilder, you know. How much do you feel like in the past all that self-worth piece has been linked to identity versus, you know, around what it is that you do versus, you know, who you actually are? And has that been something that you've been challenged with in the past too, or has that changed over time, do you reckon?
It's definitely grown, and yeah, I think I've always been on the same path and always known what I wanted to do and what I could do. I feel like all these experiences have for sure contributed to where I am and who I am as a person and how I even practice as a practitioner, you know. Like, I feel like they were all sort of within that health space, and I knew that that was where I needed to be. It was almost like I just needed all of these experiences to come together, if that makes sense, and to help me be the person I am now. So, you know, when I was bodybuilding, I was 100% like, that was just a really weird world to be in, to be honest. Like, it's a very restrictive, very, like, it takes a really driven human to be able to have that sort of dedication, to be able to step on stage in your stripper heels and a bikini, but on an ongoing basis, you know. And so that really changed me because I am a very driven human, but it was like a different drive. It was like, and it was a very restrictive drive. So it did start to play into, again, like relationships and even mine and Macca's relationships, you know. Like, I stopped going out eating and I stopped doing all that. Like, I used to ring restaurants and make sure that they could boil me some fish and greens with nothing on them before I went and dined out if I wanted to be social. So, you know, but now as a practitioner and as a nutritionist, I know how restrictive that life can be. And so I would never want that for a client. And so it's like all these things have played into now how I am and who I am, I guess. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that life experience is invaluable too. And it does. And I resonate with it because I feel it in my own self. But how, for me, even personally, I've had a few of those kind of chameleon identity changes as I've gone through too. But how sometimes I've felt kind of tied to that initially too, and that it's been hard to kind of let go of and move on to the next. But then when you get to a point, you realize that no, nothing is wasted. You know, I actually utilized this and I used that and I used this, and I wouldn't be the person that I am if I didn't have those life experiences. So absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's a real privilege, you know, like it's a privilege to be able to go through these experiences and come out of it with a knowing and a learning. I think if we go through these experiences and even if it's 5 years time, you look back and you're like, oh, that was the lesson in that. But I think we need to be able to step back. And I think if we can't find the learning or the lesson or whatever it is, because I just believe that everything does have a reason. Like we don't just do things for the sake of it. Like, you know, and so, yeah, I think it's just about stepping back and trying to figure out what that learning was and then grow from it. You know, was it a good lesson or was it a bad lesson? Is it a lesson that we can grow from? Is it a lesson that we can, that's changed our story or our way of thinking or about our story? You know, all those sorts of things.
Like nothing is a waste, or not regretting or resenting or seeing it as time that you could have been doing something else. But like as you said, see a part of the story, like a piece of the puzzle as you move your way forward. I'd love to know a little bit more about, you know, we talked about how you had a lot of those signs and symptoms and things were popping up that you were maybe not listening to or maybe weren't even aware of. How do you check in with yourself physically, mentally, emotionally these days?
Yep. So I guess these days that's been a big part of my health. So for those watching, I still manage my Hashimoto's just purely through diet and lifestyle. And thankfully I get I check in with the doctor, and I've got a team of specialists that I work with, and I check in every 6 or so months. But thankfully I haven't had to go on medication. I've been able to do that. So I guess checking into my signs and symptoms is a really big part of my health picture and managing this condition for me. So for me, for instance, like if I feel any sign of fatigue or if I start to get like constipated and stuff like that, I know I probably need to do some blood tests, check where I'm at, and then go from there. So for me, it's probably a little bit easier as well because I've studied nutrition. So I can also be like, okay, well, am I constipated because my thyroid's whacked, or am I constipated because I just simply haven't drank water? You know what I mean? So I'm always trying to ask myself these questions. I'm always trying to just reflect on my day and my diet at that point and what's changed for me. But even, you know, emotionally, like, am I more stressed right now? Is that why symptoms are perhaps popping up for me? Or so it's always just checking in. Yeah, I don't know. It's just such a natural thing for me to do now. I'm not really sure how I do it, but I guess I just am always listening to the meal, and I really believe in that 80-20 balance. So I like to nourish myself with whole foods predominantly, but then I also love soul foods. Like I'm a pizza, espresso, martini, chocolate kind of gal. So you know, it's checking in as well. And it's like, okay, well, I just had, you know, maybe more soul foods than what I usually would. So that explains why I've got that fatigue, or why I'm a little less motivated today, or why I just want to Netflix and chill and perhaps not go and do something that I know is going to mentally serve me or physically serve me, you know? So, yeah, it's just asking those sorts of questions, I guess, on a really regular basis.
Yeah, I love that idea of balance too, you know, and that 80-20 piece, because like it would be all too easy, you know, especially considering the bodybuilding days and all of that, and knowing how restrictive, you know, certain parts of life have been in the past, to maybe fall into bits and pieces of that. But, you know, having that notion of balance and that not needing to be perfect as well, like I think that's such an important message for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, I guess, like, you know, the life that you're living, you talked a bit about at the beginning around the study, the work, you know, managing your own business, having those two beautiful bubbles of yours. Like, how is it that you find ways to unplug, you know, whether it's from the busyness and the hectic of all you've got on your plate, but, you know, also the voice in your head sometimes when things maybe get a little bit busy or challenging or hard? Like, what are some tools or maybe practices or routines that you kind of stick to, or that you know have worked or tried and tested over the years?
Yeah, so I think the how first is I became really amazing with this after the birth of Van, because I saw, so Van is just over 2 now, but I saw how quickly my mental health could go downhill, even just like how quickly your day can turn bad almost, I guess, like in a second if you haven't looked after yourself first. So if you've got a baby who's just cried all day, it can become a really stressful situation. So really early on, I started Macca and I, every Sunday, I would send Macca, my husband, my dream week. And basically, it would be, he would give me what he's got on meeting wise and when he would be at work. And around that, I would schedule me time. So he knew on a Monday I wanted to go to Pilates at 5 o'clock. So he had to be home by 4:45, like it was that sort of thing. So he'd be able to open up his diary every night and it's got what I was doing of an evening. So evenings, he goes to work early at 5 a.m. So evenings were my time. So yeah, getting out of the house, and some nights it would literally just be like going for a light walk to get out of the house, or we've got a park across the road from us, so I'd go and sit in the park and just have a bit of chill time on my own though, which was really important. And we still do that. So I still schedule out my dream week. And if it doesn't happen, that's okay. Like if he gets held up at work, I get it. Like, but it might even be, instead of going for that walk, I'll go have a bath and he will take the boys out instead. So I just get the house to myself. So I think it definitely takes a team effort. So yeah, that's sort of how we schedule that. And then in terms of switching off, so I really love walking. I've recently just been able to start running a little bit again. So that's a really big mind cleanse for me. I often will try to walk or run down to the beach and just have a little meditation and then walk home. But yeah, for me, I guess it's doing the solo activities. Like anything I can do solo is a win. I do lots of journaling, and I think if I think back to even like those days when I talked about, like from going howling in the bath, like one of the first things I started doing after that was waking up early. I'm an early bird, so I'd wake up at 5 a.m. and I'd sit there with my water and my coffee and I'd just like journal and I'd goal set, and like those sorts of things have just always been really motivating for me, and it just gives me that purpose. And so that's something that I lost for a long time, but I've got all my journals sitting beside me all the time, like, so I do that every day when the boys go to sleep. And meditation I fall in and out of, I'm not gonna lie, but when I can and when I think of it, I try to do that as well. But yeah, definitely journaling is probably like my biggest one. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And in terms of that, like I guess some of that would have been what you talked on, but do you have, even outside of kind of your self-care practices, do you have any kind of daily rituals or non-negotiables?
Yep, I wake up every morning and I have a liter of warm lemon water. That's how I start my day. And ideally, if I can wake up before my boys without an alarm, is like the perfect start for my day. And I guess that's like the me part. It's just doing those little things. Like I love having a really long, warm shower of an evening when the boys go to bed. It's doing stuff like that. But with them, our daily ritual is definitely every single morning you'll find us in the park, like, playing and in the sun. And I think getting outdoors for us is just a really big one. So that's, yeah, a huge part of our day and our life is just being outdoors, connected, playing, just having fun, I guess, and trying to be off the phone as often as possible.
Oh, I know. Easier said than done sometimes, but it makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, huge, huge. Airplane mode. I try to do it as often as possible.
Yeah, and then I get in trouble because no one can ever reach me.
You forget to turn it off.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, no one's calling me. What are you talking about? What are you most proud of in your life?
Oh, my boys, like, you know, they're just my pride and joy. So definitely them. I think more recently is I've just finished the oh my God, I can't even say it, naturopathic degree. So that was a really proud moment for me because that was not an easy mission with the two babies. And it's a science degree, and science doesn't come naturally. So I think aside from my boys, that would be my proudest thing recently, is just being able to, you know, stick with that and finish that degree. And yeah, that was not an easy feat, I tell you.
Congratulations, that is some achievement,
Thank
especially
you.
with two little boys. My God. And for those, like, I guess, who don't know a lot about naturopathy, I can't even say it now. And why, you know, you are a clinical nutritionist. You've done a lot of study in your background. You know, with the two young boys, definitely not the easy path also to go down. But what drew you to naturopathy and to actually go down and, you know, add that to your toolkit?
Yeah, I truly believe food first. That's why I did nutrition. You know, I think if our diet isn't right, then we can add all the supplements or herbs and nothing's going to help, because we need to get that foundation right. But what I saw was that my clients really needed more support, or they'd get so far with their diet, but then to go to that next level of like vitality and just that next level of health, I think that's where like the herbs can really come in and play a part. So I really just wanted to expand my knowledge a little bit more so I could bring in those herbs that just help support the body and to be utilized on not an everyday type situation, but, you know, to help manage health more on a long-term scale. So if it happens to be just stress related, for instance, and that's what sort of, you know, the main presenting complaint, but the diet and everything's all pretty good still, then it's the herbs or the supplements that can really pull us back up and really rebuild that body back up. And so I think, yeah, with food, it's the foundation and it gets you so far. But I think then, you know, for that next level of health and vitality, it's really bringing in the supplements and herbs where possible and when needed. Yeah.
Mm. Sounds like a dream combination, really, doesn't it? It's not something
Yeah.
that you often think about of putting together, but actually pairing the two, it's really a no-brainer, really, when you put it like that.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Like it just, yeah, herbs, yeah, they've got some pretty powerful effects and quite quick effects too.
mm,
So yeah.
awesome. I guess with the work that you do, you know, I'm conscious of time. We've been speaking a little while already, and I'm so grateful for you sharing this time with me. But for those who don't know you, you know, with the work that you do, how can they find you? How can they learn more about you and maybe have a chat with you, you know, if it is something that they're interested in doing?
Yeah, for sure. So, Freedom Wellness, which is this account here, is where I hang most. So I'm definitely on Instagram these days. I'm not really on any other socials, and my website is just freedomwellness.com.au, and also I've got a podcast, Freedom Wellness podcast. So it's all under Freedom Wellness, all super easy, but you know, lots of content, lots of information when you go on the blog or when you go on the podcast as well. So, and then you can connect through any of those channels also.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess before we go, I would love to ask you, do you have an ask? You know, is there anything that we can be of service to you or in any way? Would love to hear.
Oh, I love this question. No, I guess it's just, you know, go check out what I do. A lot of it, like even my podcasts and stuff, it's all passion project. You know, I do it just to try to educate the masses. Like that's, I believe, why I'm here. And so, you know, if there is any way that I can educate you, then I want to. And so feel free to reach out to me and to tell me what you want from me and what I can help you with in terms of, you know, expanding your knowledge. And I'd be pretty happy. So, yeah, just check out the resources and educate yourself more. I think, you know, it's the best thing we can do for our health.
Absolutely. That education, information, awareness is I'm a firm believer that with that we gain choice, and with that choice is power, you know. And so I'm all about it for sure. And I can confirm that the podcast is awesome, and you put out some pretty amazing content. So thank you for all that you do and all that you share with us. We're all very grateful.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for hanging out with me today. Hopefully you get to go and enjoy the rest of a somewhat sunny Friday. I can still see some blue out there.
Sun.
Yes, enjoy that freedom with the boys in daycare and hubby at home. So have a beautiful weekend, and I look forward to seeing you.
Thanks for having me, darling. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks, everybody.